Hey there, and welcome to today's Explainer. We are going to dive right into an absolutely amazing, true adventure from the past. It's a story completely packed with mystery, a little bit of danger, and some really beautiful lessons. We're talking about the incredible story of Prophet Yunus, who is also known as Jonah.
So let me ask you something. Have you ever heard the story of the man who literally lived inside a giant whale? I know, right? It sounds like something straight out of an action movie, but this is actually a true story. Just imagine being swallowed completely whole by a massive sea creature and then living to tell the tale. I mean, how did he get there? And more importantly, how did he get out? Well, let's find out.
To understand how this all happened, our story begins in a very real place. Welcome to Nineveh. Now, this wasn't some made-up magical kingdom from a fairy tale. Nineveh was an ancient, bustling, super busy city located in what we now call Mosul, Iraq. Prophet Yunus actually walked those streets. And realizing where these places are helps us remember that these are true stories about real people who walk the exact same earth we live on today.
100,000. Think about that number for a second. That is how many people lived in the city of Nineveh at that time. It was just a massive city. But there was a really big problem. You see, those 100,000 people had completely forgotten about Allah. Instead of worshiping the one true creator, they were actually bowing down to statues, idols, and even just the stars up in the sky. They had totally lost their way. So, Allah, in His endless mercy, sent Prophet Yunus to help guide them back.
So Prophet Yunus took on this really massive responsibility. He tried so patiently to teach the people of Nineveh the truth. He warned them, explaining the consequences of their actions and the anger of Allah if they didn't change their ways. But man, the people were just incredibly stubborn. Not a single person believed him. They completely ignored his warnings and just flat out refused to listen. Finally, feeling super overwhelmed and honestly pretty angry that they wouldn't accept the truth, Yunus made a big decision. He walked right out of the city of Nineveh in frustration, but he did it without waiting for Allah's permission to leave.
Now, exactly 3 days after Prophet Yunus left the city, the sky began to change. And it wasn't a normal storm. Terrifying, dark, almost black clouds started gathering. It literally looked like fire was raining down from the sky. As those dark clouds crept closer and closer to the roofs of their houses, exactly the way Prophet Yunus had warned them it would, the people of Nineveh suddenly realized something huge. Yunus had been telling the absolute truth all along.
But here's the amazing part. They didn't just hide under their beds. No, they ran out into the streets, crying and weeping. They shouted out, "We are sorry." They sincerely, truly repented to Allah, begging for His forgiveness. They desperately wished that Prophet Yunus was still right there with them so they could tell him they finally believed. And because their apology was completely genuine from the bottom of their hearts, Allah, who is the most merciful, accepted their repentance. He miraculously lifted that terrifying storm completely away from their city.
But wait, meanwhile, where was Prophet Yunus? He actually had no idea that his people had completely changed their minds and repented. He had just kept walking away until he reached the seashore, still feeling really frustrated. He saw a ship getting ready to leave, so he hopped on board to just sail far away. But not long into their journey, those clear ocean skies completely vanished. A massive storm hit the water. The waves grew larger and larger, violently tossing the ship back and forth out there in the deep ocean.
The situation went from bad to incredibly dangerous in a flash. The ship was actually sinking. Giant waves were crashing over the sides, and the boat was just getting way too heavy to stay afloat. The desperate sailors knew they had to act super fast, so they started grabbing their cargo, their goods, and chucking it all into the roaring sea, trying to lighten the load. But no matter how much stuff they threw overboard, it didn't work. The ship kept sinking. The storm was just way too powerful. They realized right then and there, someone had to leave the ship, or they were all going to drown.
So, I want you to take a guess. Who had to leave the ship? Well, the sailors decided to draw lots, which is kind of like pulling names out of a hat, to decide who was going to jump into that dangerous, freezing water to save the rest of the crew. They drew the lots, and the name chosen was Yunus. They tried it a second time, and again, Yunus. 3 times they drew those lots, and every single time it pointed right to Prophet Yunus. He knew exactly what this meant. This wasn't an accident, this was a test from Allah.
And then the most unbelievable thing happens. Prophet Yunus bravely jumps right off the side of the sinking ship into the roaring, dark sea. But he doesn't drown.
Instantly, by the direct command of Allah, a giant, massive whale rises out of the deep ocean and swallows Yunus completely whole. He is now trapped inside the dark, tight, terrifying belly of a gigantic ocean creature. I know, it sounds so scary, but the amazing truth is, it was actually Allah's way of protecting him from that raging ocean.
Even in the pitch-black darkness of that whale's stomach, Yunus didn't panic, and he definitely didn't give up. He realized the mistake he made. He knew he shouldn't have left his people without Allah's permission. So he practiced repentance. Now, repentance simply means he sincerely told Allah he was sorry. He prayed super deeply, admitted he was completely wrong, and asked for forgiveness. He turned his heart completely back to his Creator, even all the way down there at the bottom of the ocean.
And because of that beautiful, totally sincere prayer, Allah forgives him. Allah commands the great whale to swim all the way up to the shore and safely spit Yunus out right onto a vast open beach. Yunus is finally safe. Now, of course, having been inside a whale for days, he was incredibly weak and sick. In fact, historical sources describe him as being as fragile as a little baby bird. But he was alive, and eventually he made the journey back to his people in Nineveh, only to discover with so much joy that all 100,000 of them now fully believed in his message.
Let's quickly trace the steps of this wild journey to lock it in. First, Yunus bravely warns the 100,000 people of Nineveh. Second, after he leaves in frustration, the terrifying dark storm rolls in, and the people apologize. Third, Yunus hops on a ship, jumps off into the storm, and gets swallowed whole by the whale. And finally, fourth, after his own really sincere apology, he is safely rescued on the shore. It is a perfect, beautiful circle of events.
So as we wrap up today's explainer, what are the big bedtime lessons we can take away from all this? What do we learn from Prophet Yunus and the city of Nineveh? Well, first, always tell the truth, just like Yunus did. Second, be patient. Sometimes people take just a little bit longer to do the right thing, and we really shouldn't walk away angry too fast. And third, maybe the most important point of all, turn to Allah whenever you make a mistake. Whether you are standing in your bedroom or sitting inside the belly of a whale, a sincere "I'm sorry" is always, always heard.
Which brings us to our final thought. I want to leave you with a gentle little question to think about. How will you be patient like Prophet Yunus today? Will you be patient with your siblings? How about with your parents? Or maybe even just being patient with yourself when you're trying to learn something totally new. Think about that as you go about the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, keep asking those big questions, and I'll catch you in the next one.